Why, hello there, players and dungeon masters alike. Sean Nelson here from Pen and Blade, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Player's Handbook to you guys and kind of give you my thoughts on whether you should get this book or not if you're considering being a player in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, if you're a dungeon master, you're probably going to need the Player's Handbook. You're going to need all the resources you can get. But if you're a player, there's a lot of resources online at the D20 SRD system reference document. You can find most of the basic rules you need to play. There's also D&D Beyond and other resources like that. And also the people you play with, like the Dungeon Master, is probably going to have the Player's Handbook and help you out with any information you need. So the question is, do you want to own this book? It is going to be a fun book to have on your shelf, something you're going to want to read and flip through. And that's what I want to address my opinion on that in this video. And basically going to look at this in a couple different angles. One of them is going to be the artwork. I'll start with that. Like, is it a nice book to look at? The next will be what it has that that you cannot find online. So what you're going to get exclusively from here. And also I want to talk a little bit about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and how it kind of stacks up in my mind to other editions and whether you want to play it at all, maybe. In case you don't know people and you're just kind of thinking like, hey, this could be something I'm interested in. So let's go ahead and get started looking at the index page. Now, it's a pretty nice book, like well printed and everything like that. But I have mixed feelings about the artwork. So let's just flip through a little bit here. This is one of the things that really bugs me. On these pages where we're looking at elves right now, we're in the elven section. So we have one drawing of an elf, and then we have just these random items everywhere. And for me, that doesn't really do much for me. I'd much rather see a couple more images of elves, or this is pretty cool, like elven homes and stuff like that. I mean, the props, okay, that's I guess an okay prop, but like a leaf and a flower, like that doesn't spark my imagination or anything. Here's another elf, great. So, but then we got more weird random stuff, humans. We got one picture of a human, like what are these, monocle or sunglasses, whatever, a dragonborn. So that's one thing, and also I find that the art's a little inconsistent. The styles are different, and I don't like all the styles for personally. Like, that's cool, I like that. You know, this is cool, I like that. But like this one, for instance, I don't mean to be offensive or harsh, but I feel like this is like really good DeviantArt level, but like not quite at the professional level. Like this one too could use some more polish and just like, I mean, I guess they're going for a sketchy look maybe, but it didn't come off sketchy enough. I like this one. See, this I feel like is a nice sketchy look, very professional. But some of them don't. This one's much cleaner. I really liked 4th edition's art anyways. So those are my thoughts on the art, and they do have like some full page spreads, and the art is definitely throughout. Like this guy looks a lot more realistic than this guy, you know, just like almost like a completely different art style, which I don't know, I'm not a huge fan. I'm trying to find some of the full page spreads to show you guys. There, not really. Anyways, we'll probably stumble across them at some point. So at the beginning of different chapter heads, we'll have stuff like that. Alright, so it's not bad, but it's not changing my life. This one's pretty cool. See, we need more like this. Adventurers battling dragons and stuff, but like, why are they all just standing around? Why isn't one shooting a fireball? Why isn't one about to stab him in the head? Why isn't one, you know, being smacked to the side by his giant claw? Like, I don't know, I feel like, it's just like everything's close but no cigar, you know what I mean? And I didn't really feel that way as much about the older editions. So that's all I'll say about the artwork and the aesthetics. Let's go ahead and look at what you're going to get in the book that you're not going to find on D20 SRD or D&D Beyond. One of the big things is the flavor text. Here's another one. See, I like this. This is cool. Let's have more of these. Hanging around the campfire, you get a feel for all of their personalities a little bit. I mean, honestly, I don't feel a lot of personality from these guys. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I want to love this, but like, I don't really get the feeling that like this one's a little more where the expressions on their face and they're all quite different looking. All right, so let's move along. So one of the things you're going to get is the flavor text. All right. And actually, before we get into that, I wanted to say that on the D20 SRD, you basically get all the races and classes, but you don't get all the variations. So for each race, you're going to get, so here we got the dwarfs, and they're going to have a couple sub-races. You're going to have the hill dwarfs, and you're going to have a mountain dwarf. On the D20 SRD, you're only going to get hill dwarf, all right? I think that's the same with the D&D Beyond if you don't pay for it. For elves, you got high and wood elves. I think you're only going to get the high elves, you know, or only get the wood elves, one of them. So you're going to be missing that, and it's the same with classes. With the classes, and I think that's a much bigger deal even, is that each class, like let's say we go to the paladin, or it doesn't matter, but let's say the paladin, because that's the one I looked at particularly. He has 3 different oaths. I don't think I have to show you guys, but anyways, just believe me. He has 3 oaths, but you only get to choose, you only get the information for the first oath on the, you only get information for the first, what's it called, subclass choice that you get at level 3 on the D20 SRD. So that's a pretty big deal. Let's read a little bit of flavor checks on the Hill Dwarf. As a Hill Dwarf, you have keen senses, deep intuition, and remarkable resilience. The Gold Dwarves of Faerun in their mighty southern kingdoms are Hill Dwarves, as are the exiled Nadar and the debased Klar of Kirn in the Dragonlance setting. So, I feel like a lot of this book, they're kind of pushing these, like, here we have Faerun again, Hylar, like, Dragonlance. Do you know about these settings? I personally don't that much, you know. I like to make up my own homebrews or just whatever. But so that's kind of the thing where I'm reading through these. I'm not like loving it. And let's keep going on the flavor text a bit. So let's read this. I'm just kind of choosing ones randomly. I haven't read this before. I'll tell you beforehand though, these flavor texts at the beginning of the races and classes, they don't really. Doesn't do much for me, honestly. Or they don't have it on the classes, but it seems like an excerpt from a novel. Let's read it. I have never, let's do it in an elvish style. I have never imagined such beauty existed, Goldmoon said softly. The day's march has been difficult, but the reward at the end was beyond their dreams. The companions stood on a high cliff over the fabled city of Quailinost. 4 slender spires rose from the city's corners like glistening spindles, their brilliant white stones marbled with shining silver. Graceful arches swooping from spire to spire soared through the air, crafted by ancient dwarven metalsmiths. They were strong enough to hold the weight of an army, yet they appeared so delicate that a bird lighting on them might overthrow the balance. These glistening arches were the city's only boundaries. There were no walls around Quailinost. The elven city opened its arms lovingly to the wilderness. Alright. It's like, alright, you described an elven city, I guess they love the wilderness, I guess they're really fancy, but I knew all that stuff about elves anyways. Whatever. Doesn't really help me play my character, I feel like, too much. Let's see what it says here. Elves are magical people of otherworldly grace, living in the world, but not entirely part of it. They live in places of ethereal beauty, in the midst of ancient forests, or in silvery spires glittering with ancient fairy light, where soft music drifts through the air and gentle fragrances waft on the breeze. Elves love nature and magic, art and artistry, music and poetry, and the good things of the world. Now, I know that about elves. I mean, honestly, it didn't really do much for me. I don't know about you guys. I guess if you're completely new to the fantasy genre, it's important information, and that's how they gotta frame it. But if you know what elves and dwarves and all that stuff is, you don't really need it. This, though, is what I thought was the most interesting section. They have these for most of the different, races. And basically, it tells you how they relate to the other major races, which I thought was a very helpful little tool for role-playing. So let's see what elves say. Haughty but gracious. Although they can be haughty, elves are generally gracious, even to those who fall short of their high expectations, which is most non-elves. Still, they can find good in just about anyone. Dwarves. Dwarves are dull, clumsy oafs, but what they lack in humor, sophistication, and manners they make up for in valor, and I must admit, their best smiths produce art that approaches elven quality. Halflings. Halflings are people of simple pleasures, and that is not a quality to scorn. They're good folk, they care for each other and tend their gardens, and they have proven themselves tougher than they seem when need arises. Humans. All that haste, their ambition and drive to accomplish something before their brief lives pass away. Human endeavor seems so futile sometimes, but then you look at what they have accomplished and you have to appreciate their achievements, if only to slow down and learn some refinement. If only they could slow down and learn some refinement. So I like this because it gives you a nice way of playing your character and interacting with other characters, and the way it's written is very personable. Like, it's not so fancy or anything. That it's like very like, okay, I understand how he feels. That's at least I think they're written in a very straightforward way like that. Let's go ahead and read like one more, just to see like, what do Dragonborns think of gnomes? Gnomes don't look like a threat and can quickly disarm suspicion with good humor. The common folk are often curious about gnomes, likely never having seen one before, but they are rarely hostile or fearful. Alright, whatever. Anyways, so that's kind of a cool little thing. And aside from that, I mean, honestly, I'm not too impressed with the world building or whatever around the races. Let's go over to the classes, or the text around it. Didn't really make me want to read it too much. The classes were a little more interesting, but let's go ahead. I guess let's just read a little bit about the barbarians. Basically, what they do is they go show 3 examples of different types of people from that one class, and then they talk about the class in general. So, a tall human tribesman strides through a blizzard, draped in fur and hefting his axe. He laughs as he charges towards the frost giant who dared poach his people's elk herd. So let's break down that for a second. I really like these sections because they give so much little fun prompts in a small period of time. We've got an idea for race and class in an environment, so different environments, because anyway, so this is a blizzard. Oh, okay, barbarian in snow. Then you've got his weapon, his attitude. He laughs as he charges towards him, and like almost like a prompt for an adventure that, like, oh, if something poaches a barbarian tribe's food source, elk or whatever, then that could, you know, you might want to go take care of that. Let's do the next one. A half-orc snarls at the latest challenger to her authority over their savage tribe, ready to break his neck with her bare hands as she did to the last 6 rivals. Very simple, but then you're like, oh, a barbarian could be a tribal leader, and a really tough one at that. Frothing at the mouth, the dwarf slams his helmet into the face of his drow foe, then turns to drive his armored elbow into the gut of another. So now we're thinking, oh, okay, they can be armored as well, and that the barbarian nature comes more from their ferocity in battle. These barbarians, different as they might be, are defined by their rage, unbridled, unquenchable, and unthinking fury. More than mere emotion, their anger is the ferocity of a cornered predator, the unrelenting assault of a storm, the churning turmoil of the sea. See, I like that, because you can choose, like, oh, is my ferocity that of a cornered predator, or is it the assault of a storm, or the churning turmoil of the sea, or some other kind of rage, you know? It kind of sparks the imagination, which I feel like is what you want from these books, sparking a lot of imagination, a lot of sparky imaginations. For some, their rage springs from a communion with fierce animal spirits. Others draw from the roiling reservoir of anger in a world full of pain. For every barbarian, rage is a power that fuels not just a battle frenzy, but also uncanny reflexes, resilience, and feats of strength. Cool. Primal instincts. So they'll have a couple other sections. Not every member of the tribe deems a barbarian, so signs and blah blah blah. So that's pretty neat. Yeah, not bad, not too shabby. All right, so there's some good stuff on the classes there. Maybe I'll give you one more example in case you don't have, you want to get an idea. Druid, holding high a gnarled staff wreathed with holly. An elf summons the fury of a storm and calls down explosive bolts of lightning to smite the torch-carrying orcs who threaten her forest. Crouching out of sight on a high tree branch in the form of a leopard, a human peers out of the jungle at the strange construction of a temple of evil elemental air, keeping close eye on the cultist activities. Swinging a blade formed of pure fire, a half-elf charges into a mass of skeletal soldiers, sundering the unnatural magic that gives the foul creatures their mocking semblance of life. I don't really like this as the druid, man. Sorry. I feel like the drawing's not that great. Like, how is that stuck on his back? What? Huh? Okay, and that face, I don't know. Just not feeling it. Sorry. I know we got past the art, but that kind of stuff bugs me. She's pretty cool, I guess. Much better than another one anyways. Alright. So I think we've gone ahead, and I like this drawing a lot. I think we've gone ahead and kind of covered the races and the classes, what you're going to be getting, what you're going to be missing. So yeah, I think the classes section especially is the place where you're going to get a lot of value out of this book. Especially because all the different, you can find these on the SRD, but it's nice also to have it in person, just to flip through. But yeah, the flavor text is alright. Alright, let's keep moving on, because there's a couple other sections of the book, aside from the races and classes, that we can consider, whether if you want to get this book or not. Let's see. Alright, we're still in the wizards. Alright. So the next section, after you get past the races and classes, is going to be personality and background. And that's actually a pretty darn cool section, because on the D20 SRD, you do not get any backgrounds except for Acolyte. So I guess they're assuming that everyone's just going to be an Acolyte if you don't buy their game. So unless you want to be an Acolyte, But these sections are pretty cool. These I feel like are places where you can get, since you can read about Acolyte, I'll go to another one. We'll say Guild Artisan, randomly. You are a member of the Artisans Guild, skilled in a particular field and closely associated with other artisans. You are a well-established part of the mercantile world, freed by trade and wealth from the constraint of feudal social order. You learned your skills as an apprentice to a master artisan under the sponsorship of your guild until you became a master in your own right. Then you have all these things, all these charts. This is fun. Guild business. Oh, you could roll it, you could choose one. All right, I'm gonna be a guild guy. Let me just do this real quick. Alright, I'm going to do jewelers and gem cutters. That sounds fancy. Then my personality trait, let's go 5. I'm rude to people who lack commitment to hard work and fair play. So very serious, hard-working jeweler, man. Just like his face in the jewel, just working all day. Let's do 4. Greed. I'm only in it for the money. Hard-working, greedy. So he wants to make tons of money off jewelry. That makes sense. 2. I created a great work for someone and then found them unworthy to receive it. I'm still looking for someone worthy. So maybe this is interesting. So that kind of goes against the greed and stuff. But maybe he mostly just sells his stuff, but he created one work that was just better than all his other works. And something in his heart makes him want to give it to someone who deserves it, not just to sell it, because he's already very wealthy, he doesn't need more money. So that's a cool little quest, maybe. I want to go on a quest to find someone worthy to don the crown. He made like this tiara, so he needs to find a princess. And let's do 6. I'm horribly jealous of anyone who can outshine my handiwork. Everywhere I go, I'm surrounded by rivals. So that's why he maybe carries that crown around to show his rivals that he's better than them. So look at that, just randomly going through this. I already have a cool little character, and if I was to add a race in the class to it, I'm sure I could get a lot of variation on like this story and really dial it down to something unique. So I will say that the background section is quite fun, and there's a good amount of backgrounds. We've got hermits, we've got nobles, we've got guild artisan, soldier, outlander, all sorts of stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna give you that. If that's something that interests you, if you'd like to sit in your room with some dice, coming up with characters, thinking about stuff, or using them to prompt world building ideas for other stuff like a novel or whatever, or if you're dungeon master, those charts can be really nice to have. Equipment section is whatever. The equipment in this is, I'm going to talk about the whole 5e system after this, but the equipment's pretty straightforward, nothing too fancy. It's a easy enough system, so that's nice, but not a very exciting system. Like, okay, why did you commission an artist to do a painting of cake? I mean, does it cost less to commission a painting of cake? Because I would rather had, like, what are we looking at? Food, drinks, and lodging? People eating a cake. Adventurers sitting around the table eating cake. Why do I want to see this? Coins? I guess the coins are cool to give you an idea of currency. Some of these are alright, but like, I can imagine a voodoo doll like that. In fact, I can imagine a better one, thank you very much. I can imagine sheet music. You know, like, I guess the dice is okay, but like, that's why I'm like, I feel like there was wasted opportunities on these things. Rather than have just a trinket sitting by itself, have a character holding the trinket and using it so we can see what it would be like in a campaign setting. This guy's kind of cool. Alright, cool. So, now then we're gonna have rules, blah blah blah, feats. They added feats, but apparently they're not as they're really good feats, but I think you have to take them instead of an ability score improvement. It's a nice thing, I guess. It's a good system. I'm not against it. Let's see. Oh yeah, this guy again. Alright. Using ability scores is basically letting you know about the different skills and stuff like that. Whatever. Just more rules. I wouldn't buy the book just for the base rules because there's so many websites and videos and stuff that you can learn the base rules on. How to go on an adventure. See, this is more like the Dungeon Master. That's why if you're a Dungeon Master, okay, you're probably going to want to have this for easy access and reference and learn from whatever. Food and water, blah, blah, blah. Okay, long rest. This rest system, I'll talk about that when I talk about the D&D system as a whole. Combat, talking about thing. So I think that's pretty much it. You know, there's, aside from this, is there anything else basic that's not just interesting here that's not just the rules of the book? All the spells, tons of spells. It's much easier to reference spells from the book, I feel like, than from online. Or no, maybe depending on the program. But all right, I think that's it. Oh yeah, no, there is something else. This is like the secret thing. I almost didn't know about these sections until I was looking through the book more thoroughly to do this review. These are cool drawings. I like these. These are all the different status symbols. I like that. It's like, see, like stunned. Give an example of what stunned looks like. Unconscious. Dang, man. What is this? Poison. So it's kind of cool. That's fun. This is pretty cool. These appendices. Pantheon appendices. Tons of these guys. Just quickly listed. It's a fun place to get ideas for your character. Let's do, I'm going to make my, here, what about this guy? God of Poetry and Song. Light. Alright, you know, I could just add that to the background I made to add another element. Then we got non-human deities. Then we've got historical, fantasy historical ones. So Celtic, Greek, and Egyptian. You can use those in your things, which is pretty cool. Learn something about real life mythology. A little bit about the planes of existence. You know, it's good stuff to know. More on the DM side, I guess. And a couple creatures that you might need to use. You know, if you have an animal companion or you turn into a creature. All right. About bing, bada boom. Is that it? You got the character sheet, but I think there are better character sheets designed by other people out there. Table of contents, inspirational reading. Oh, I didn't see this. That's interesting. Oh, you got Tolkien and stuff. So that's cool. I don't think they're like all these are necessarily, well, like Wizard of the Coast books or something, or D&D franchise books. So it's nice. They got a whole range of fantasy books for you to check out for inspiration. Cool. So, what do I think of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition in general? Okay. 5th edition. I guess I'll just kind of flip through the book while I'm talking so that you guys can get even more idea of what you're in for if you're going to purchase this book. So, 5th edition, I think is actually quite a good edition. I feel like 3.5 is kind of like the heart of Dungeons and Dragons, and the reason why is because I feel like it's a great balance between the deadliness of the earlier editions and the like fun and customizability of the later editions. Now, 4th edition went a little too far on the gaminess of the Dungeons and Dragons franchise. I thought it became very much like a board game or a strategy. You know, like it wasn't easy to play in theater of the mind, and the storytelling aspects seemed to take a backseat to the battle mechanic aspects or something. At least that's kind of the feel I got. So yeah, I would think that. So then we're coming to, let's go to from the 5th edition. 5th edition, they brought things back towards 3.5, where it's more of, feels like a tabletop role-playing game, and that it's about storytelling and adventures and stuff, and it's not like an MMO made into a tabletop RPG. But they still kept some of the like, what's the word? It's just like when you're a hero in 4th edition, you're like, I'm blowing stuff up, I'm killing stuff, I'm awesome, I'm like a superhero. You know, it's got a superhero vibe to it. A little more toned down than 4th, but definitely more superhero-like than 3rd edition. All right? So yeah, so it's really like a fun one if you want to create a character, like whatever character you want, and be really creative with the way the character looks and what they can do and stuff. I think it's a really fun edition. It's fun to make characters, and it's also not too complicated to make characters. So let's actually go over to one of the classes. Oh, and I wanted to talk about the races feel really good. 3rd edition, races didn't really matter. You get a stat boost, that's going to be the biggest thing. After level 1, higher levels, races don't really matter too much. These, different. For instance, I played a tiefling, and tieflings get these spells for like one at 1st level, one at 3rd, one at 5th. So you're like a barbarian tiefling, but you can shoot a fireball. Like, okay, that's going to stick with you. You know, that's gonna be helpful at any level. Let's see what half-orcs get. So something like this, where it's relentless endurance. When you're reduced to 0 hit points, but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. That's huge, and it's going to help you from level 1 to level 20. Proficiency intimidation. That's a nice one too. It's going to be useful through all levels. When you score a critical hit with weapons, you do extra damage for critical hits. That's all like stuff like evergreen stuff that's going to help your character. All right. Now I was going to talk about classes. Classes are pretty cool. You get something new pretty much every level, but usually just like one new thing or one or two like choices to make. Like here, let's see, rage on our defense. So you start off with 2 features at level 1. You get 2 features at level 2. You get 1 feature at level 3, but it's a choice. Then you get an ability score improvement. Like you can choose 3 different primal paths. You're gonna get an extra attack, just that's easy. Fast movement, okay? That's like kind of passive stuff. Another path feature that you get to choose at 6. So 3rd level, 6th level, you get a choice. Ability score improvement, you get a choice. But that's just one choice. So when you're leveling up, you don't have like 5 choices to make. Alright? And then if you don't make a choice, if you just get stuff, usually you get like 2 things. So it's kind of fun either way. Leveling feels good, but it's not an extremely long and drawn out process. And yeah, so let's see what we got on here. Spell casting, of course, choosing spells can be a bit of a drawn-out process. Jack of all trades, Song of Rest, Bard College. I mean, this guy's probably going to have more stuff than most because of Bards. He's missing some stuff on a few levels. Counter Charm, Bardic Charge. So Bardic, maybe a little on leveling up. Let's look at the Cleric. We've got spell casting, you know, Divine, Channel Divinity. Okay, missing something, Destroying Dead. So maybe not every level, but I think leveling up is still... It's faster than old editions, I think, and still pretty fun. Let's see, where are we gonna go from this next? There's a good amount of classes, and I think there's a good variation, and each class feels pretty strong and well balanced as far as I can tell. Now, as far as the system itself, let's talk about like the combat and the healing and stuff. Healing is a little complicated, but it makes sense in a way that's somewhat realistic. You've got your short and long rests, and then your certain things recharge at short rests, certain things recharge from long rests. And there's a couple systems where like you have to roll a dice to see how many recharges you get, which I think is maybe a little too complicated. And there's also like, for instance, when you expend healing surges at a short rest or whatever they're called, like you heal yourself, you can have like a certain number of hit dice. So let's say you have 5 hit dice and you spend 3 to heal yourself. So you roll 3 dice, and then the next day you're going to roll a D4, and that's how many healing surges you're going to get back. So if you roll a 1, you're still going to be missing. You're going to have used your 3 and you rolled a 1. So now you've got 2 and you rolled a 1, you get 3. So you're still missing 2. So it's like, okay, I get it. It makes things a little more like you got to decide what you're going to use. I don't know why I stopped on such a boring page. What you got to decide what you're going to use, when you're going to use them, and you're not sure if you're going to get them back. So it's not a cut and dry decision. I get it. So I guess I am a little bit more towards the side of simplicity, but D&D is not intended to be the simplest game. I think it's intended to be as simple as it can be without sacrificing the customizability and the nuances and the realism of the kind of battles and adventures you're going to go on. So, and I think they captured that pretty well. I'm actually developing my own tabletop RPG that's more on the simple, fun side of things, so you can really create a character quickly, get into an adventure, and if your character dies, it's no big deal, you're going to make another one. But it can also be the kind of thing that goes on. And as I'm designing it, I'm learning that, like, oh, okay, I'm having to make choices that are saying, like, this is not very realistic, but if you want to learn some alphabets, some Draconic or Elvish or Dwarvish, yeah, so I'm finding, like, I see why they make the decisions, and it is longer play session type game. I think I'm pretty much, like, wrapping up what I wanted to say and kind of giving you guys a pretty, I think it's a decently deep preview of what I think of the Player's Handbook and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition in general. And I think that this book is worth it for the most part, but at the same time, you can come up with this stuff in your imagination, and unless you like the easy reference, or you're going to play a lot, then you're going to want to have the book probably anyways, or you want to support wizards because they're cool, then get the book. But you could probably do without it, and with all like the homebrew stuff out there, and just kind of using your own imagination and having fun with it, you can get a lot of the same results. The only thing is you're going to definitely want to borrow someone's Player's Handbook to get all the classes, like your Dungeon Master or whatever, to get all the classes, the different class archetypes, instead of just having access to one, and the different race archetypes instead of having access to one, and the backgrounds that you don't really have on the D20 SRP. So I hope that was helpful, you guys. If you want me to do a kind of review like this on any other tabletop RPG books, especially Dungeons and Dragons, because I'm familiar with that, let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace, God bless, and stay fantastic, everyone.